Do you want to start off?
Sure.
Okay, we'll start.
I'll
do the intro. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Season 2 of Des Play. We're here again, once again, with Mr. Jason Rubin.
We're going to have to do that.
He's already
We're not
stuck.
playing.
He's hit a really
I'm already
hard
stuck
puzzle.
on my own game. Start won't start.
Is that controller missing?
I think there.
Oh.
Just need a little
right.
tip from me.
So it wasn't the start
expert
button.
Jak and Daxter
Yeah,
player.
it wasn't the start button.
We're going to play Jak and Daxter today, and which is Jason's game. So this is a game that actually we did play a lot. This came out during the production of Psychonauts.
Psychonauts? So this is 2001.
2001. Right. And this is a big, influential game, and then it was it was one of the first big it was like a streaming space, right? It seemed like a streaming. It seemed like you guys really hit the level load. There were no level loads. It seemed like while you're going from location to location.
Yeah, that was one of the core tenets of Jak and Daxter when we were making it. Is we wanted to have zero loads and never take you out of the game, and we achieved it. It may have. I think we probably pushed it too hard. It didn't necessarily need to have zero load time. But it wasn't easy, and we got that in there. So
where do you put your game
streaming
tips if there's no loading screen?
Exactly.
And there's Jak and his barfing friend.
Who becomes Daxter?
Oh, that's right. That becomes Daxter.
So that's Daxter, yeah.
Does he ever get turned back into a person?
In the last game, you find out that he's an Otzel, and he's just this all blurs. This all blurs. I don't even know. By the time on Crash, I was the artist who did the textures and modeling of Crash, and I animated him. By the time Jak and Daxter came around, our team had gone from 8 people to there was like 40 or so that made this game, and much more talented people had been hired to do the animation, to do the modeling, to do all of that stuff. So I was relegated at this point to particles. Which, don't underestimate the value.
Torch
that
right
torch
there.
was mine. Like
Good
literally
job,
every
nice.
particle you see in this game was mine. So I was doing management with half of my time and particle systems with the other half. That little ploof of smoke you just saw there, mine. Like all of that right there,
glitter?
mine. Very happy with the
smoke.
yeah.
Yeah, it's got that Rubenesque flavor to it.
But the animation greatly improves because we hired real animators, not someone who had kind of learned on the job. So this is definitely better, and that is Dee Snider as the voice of the bad guy. Yes. That was a fun recording session.
himself.
Absolutely.
Oh man, here I thought we, were the first to get heavy metal singers in the.
No, Dee Snider.
You guys were like,
And actually, Jak and Daxter had some weaknesses as compared to Crash, and some strengths. I think one of the big weaknesses was we never had a great bad guy. This character dies at the end of the first game. He wasn't a great bad guy, not because of Dee Snider, who's awesome, but just because of the way we set it up. There was no cortex for Jak and Daxter to go after time and time again. And I think with these character action games, the bad guy is as important as the good guy. That's the foil, right?
yeah, the Bowser.
Exactly. And we just didn't have that quality. We did a lot of animation, though.
This is another thing our publisher told us at the time when they were talking about this game. Tell me this is true or false. They're like, okay, we want to change your character a lot because Jak and Daxter, this went through a lot of focus groups, and the thing they would say was that every region, like Europe and Japan, everyone got to have some influence on the character, and they could point to different regions as being responsible for different aspects of Jak's face and shape and his ears and all that.
Yes, so there were, as I said, there were a bunch of mistakes I think we made on Jak and Daxter, and one of the mistakes that we made was we designed much more by committee than we did with Crash. Crash was designed by Charles Zembalis, Joe Pearson, 2 cartoon animators, and concept artists from Hollywood, along with Bob Raffi, who was our lead artist, and then with commentary from me, and I kind of led that group and everybody else at Naughty Dog. But it was the dream of a very small group of people, and really a vision of Naughty Dog's. Jak was much more of a committee, right? There were people saying you shouldn't do this for Japan. There were people who were saying you should do this for Europe. We had kind of 3 major groups, 4, I guess. Naughty Dog, and then we had Sony America, Sony Japan, and Sony Europe coming in and talking. And I think it actually weakened the character. So if someone tells you that's the way to design a character, and they use Jak and Daxter as an example, I would say we would have been better off with a clear vision from an artist such as yourself, and less on design by committee.
So, I mean, do you remember parts of Jak's face that come from different parts of the world? Or different regions asking for him to have green eyebrows, or was there?
Yeah, like the ears and the face comes from kind of a cartoon look that was more Japanese friendly, the color of his hair and stuff. I remember talking about something having to do with green hair and what it meant, and it was a lot of people adding commentary. And I do think he's a great character. I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not saying he's a bad character, but he probably would have benefited from a little bit more of a single vision and a little bit less of a throw in the kitchen sink.
But Daxter's actually...
Daxter's the single vision because nobody really cared about the sidekick. And I think Daxter's a stronger character than Jak because of that.
Well, he benefits from that thing we're talking about, where in the last episode, where you want your main character to be so likable, but like Daxter's the character that gets to have fun. He's the one that gets to be like the id, and just do whatever he feels and say whatever he thinks and say something that might rub people the wrong way, but he doesn't care.
And that was totally the design. We put a sidekick in because I was afraid, and again, I think I said this the last conversation we had, I was afraid that having the main character talk would distance you from the main character, that you would say, I'm not that character, he cracked a bad joke, or he said something I wouldn't have necessarily said in this position. Whereas the sidekick, Daxter, could say whatever he wanted, he could be an idiot, you could hate him because he's a sidekick, and you could kick him, actually, was one of our initial concepts, to shut him up for a minute, so you'd constantly be kicking him. We took that out, but the whole idea was he was able to be annoying, and he was able to be this alternate character that you didn't worry about. And because of that, he's a hell of a lot more interesting in many ways than Jak is. In later games, the two of them are more equal, but in this game, I think we would have done better. Look at how much animation we're putting in, by the way.
Yeah.
We started Crash Bandicoot with the concept of doing an animated cartoon that was mostly game, and we utterly failed to deliver on the animation. And as we progress towards the last game, there becomes a plot. With Jak and Daxter, finally we have a hardware that can handle having all of this going on, and we had the budget to do it. $15 million was the budget on this game, by the way.
Oh, really?
Significantly more than the $2 million for Crash. So we had all that, and we start putting animation in, and by the time we get to Jak 2, you'll see back and forth animation gameplay seamlessly, and this is all on the way to Uncharted, which I didn't work with, but is effectively the culmination of the idea of mixing story and game into a seamless.
Look at those materials on those precursor orbs.
Oh yeah,
Shiny.
we had some high, We're now doing real shaders.
And with the last game, just before this, was a Crash. What was the last thing we did right before this?
Crash Team Racing.
Team Racing, okay.
Which was probably the most fun game to test that I did, but the least fun from a development standpoint because it was done, the full production was 8 months and 6 days.
You're skipping those orbs. You don't have to.
I'm trying to, giving the audience, seeing go farther in the game. I'm not going for completion here. Well, I probably should.
I remember being struck. We all sat here when we first got the game, and we were playing it. Just how
My particle.
How fun! That was amazing. Rubenesque. I can use that again. Just how his secondary motion when he jumps. Like he's got all these things that hang off of him and go like Daxter himself, but also his hair and just.
Yep. Andy and we really wanted to push animation forward. So if you look at the way it tweens and stretches and everything that's going on, we had a huge amount of work to get a bone structure that would allow the characters to do that kind of craziness and basically ignore the bones if need be.
Do you remember how many bones he had?
I don't remember exactly how many he had. But
More
again,
than
this
Crash.
is by the time we get here, you have different people. Billy was modeling animator. Different animator than me, so you're getting to a big and probably multiple people working on the animations of a single character, which was unheard of in games before that. You had a single animator.
You'd own a character.
But I do remember that we went through a massive amount of work to get. I think at most you could have 8 different animations tweening between each other at the same time seamlessly, and no other game was really doing that back then.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Of course, again, that directly translates into an Uncharted where you could be doing something and jump up and grab the edge of a cliff, and it doesn't look like he's hitching or weird. Everything just works together. Naughty Dog's games are not sequential. They're really a constant stream of improvement towards that end goal of the story and game interwoven. And they've really done an amazing job with Uncharted since Last of Us since I left.
I mean, the particle work has gone downhill.
Yeah.
Since the peak here, where it was the best. But
the number of polygons we got on screen, though, compared to what was done back then, was huge. And I remember we were always having challenges where we got to the end of our ability to do polygons, and someone would say solve it in particles, and I'd have to go off and figure it out. Look at the number of particles. You got water in the background there.
Breakdancing.
Breakdancing.
I was never annoyed by Daxter, except for when you died, which I did a lot. He would come over and get in your face and just remind you that you had died. He's got a lot of different things to say, but
Crash had a ton of death animations, and most other games still to this day don't do that. We almost had a death animation for every thing that could happen.
Yeah, you get burned,
Squashed,
impaled on
everything.
spikes. No, he didn't get impaled on spikes.
Here we are again, cutting away the story seamlessly. I know it seems like obvious and easy, but back then people didn't really do this kind of thing. And this was, again, all trying to get to the point where we could just tell a story and have all the characters speaking to you as you were going through things.
Precursor is a big word for a title.
Wasn't always wild about the name either.
No?
No, Naughty Dog has a very interesting naming, at least while I was there, naming thing. We had Crash Bandicoot, which was fine, and we had, well, there was a Crash Bandicoot, the Precursor Legacy, or something. No, that was Jak. Crash Bandicoot, then Crash 2, Cortex Strikes Back or something, and then Crash 3, and with a different type of number, and Jak had that same problem too. Everything was just, yeah, exactly. Jak, every game had a different naming philosophy.
And camera was the thing that we always found most challenging in Psychonauts. Like, how do you have an interesting environment with trees in it, and hallways and things like that, but not have the camera constantly going behind things?
Yep, and we can play with that. And you'll see it actually avoids the tree and the leaf there. And
I remember you have a physical camera model here, right?
I think so,
Which I
yeah.
think we went through for a virtual one where the physical camera is kind of like the camera's treated like it has a collision on it.
It is, yeah.
And it'll push against things and the
It moves away from things, that's right.
And there's one point in the whole game, I think, where I couldn't move the camera where I wanted to because I'm imagining this. There's a snow scene with a like a fort, and you're going around the outside of the fort, and the camera goes in this little nook, and I was like, hey, the camera actually can't move. It's actually like a physical object here. Yeah, you talking?
This is how long it's been since I played. This is the training level, so I probably didn't get something I needed to train with. Either didn't defeat all those creatures or something else.
All right, first of all, I was going to invert the. You're obviously playing with the horizontal inversion, which is incorrect. No, I'll put it back. We talked about this with Ted a lot. There's so many
camera up, camera down, flying things. Yeah, we actually, this was one of the big arguments we had. I think it was on Crash for one of the flying biplane levels, and I remember two people coming into my office and both of them threatening to quit if we went with the other person's opinion of which way it should default to.
And you fired them both.
What are you going to do? Well, no, I was like, I wanted you guys to think about this, first of all. And second of all, why don't we do a focus test? So we did a focus test and we found 50-50. There is no right answer.
Even some people fight about what should be called inverted.
Right. Exactly. Like it was one of those things that it was a religious argument for people, that there was no way to see the other person's viewpoint.
Wait, you can't change the. Do you have an option to change the horizontal?
I don't think so.
God. Now it is.
Not on
kind
this
of
one. On flying you would, but not on just.
I just noticed you don't have an up down that you go zoom in and zoom out, so you can't look up.
No.
To the.
You always look at the character.
What tutorial was I in just now?
Go back up the. This will, of course, be edited out.
This is what we need to do.
I think.
No.
I don't know. I don't think so. I honestly don't remember. I know I have played this level hundreds of times when it was being built, but 45 years old, the mind goes, right?
I don't know. I'm much younger than that, so I don't know. This game also has these environments that stick with you. It's one of those games that has, I'll probably never get to it, but the spider caves, spider mines with those weird like centipede things that I would think about that level when I wasn't playing it all the time.
Yeah, and I remember we had a fight with the ratings board because there was purple blood coming out of the spider, and they wanted to make this like a T+ game or something.
It's just spider nectar.
It's spider nuts, yeah, whatever it is. It's that was one of the big arguments we had, and we ended up having.
Is that how I came in here?
No, you go through there. Go through the door. Look at that camera getting right up on you because it had nowhere to go, but not getting into anything.
That. See, I'm pushing and it won't spin around me.
Right. It absolutely won't allow itself to go through things. I mean, I'm sure there are edge cases where it does, but it managed to go in and out of those little pillars without.
There was a lot of debate here about that because you're like there's the trade-off of the player's freedom to like put the camera where they want, and then
you're probably good. You probably got the last orb, and go back down and see if that
off this ledge. No.
Yeah.
Good. Drop.
There you go. So. Jak was definitely self-directed. We had a 3-project deal with Universal, and that was Crash. Ended up being Crash 1, Crash 2, and Crash 3. After Crash 3, we decided we were going to continue working with Universal, and we set off to make a racing game that at the time had block-headed characters with no personality in it. Took that racing game engine to Sony and said, "It'd be really nice if this was a Crash game. We don't want to work with Universal. You guys need to figure this out."
Wait, who said I want to make a bland driving game with no character?
We did.
That was you guys. Like,
Let's do a racing game. Worst case scenario, we'll figure out new characters. Best case scenario, Sony will get the rights to Crash from Universal. That did happen. They got the rights. It was the right thing for everybody. That became Crash Team Racing. And while Crash Team Racing was being made, I was working on Crash Team Racing. Andy was working on the engine for this. Stephen White was working on the engine for this. He's one of our lead programmers. Mark Cerny was working on the engine with this. By that time, he had left Universal, and he was always a big part of Naughty Dog's, technical work, level design work, just in general, a big part of everything we did. So Mark was working on this, Steve White was working on this, Andy Gavin working on this. That was the 3 programmers that I knew and trusted best. We had new programmers that had just joined the company that did Crash Team Racing with me. They were fantastically talented, but a new group together making a game is always trouble, and 8 months, 6 days from the moment we got a green light on the project. So that was Crash Team Racing, and while that was happening, we were building an engine that we knew would be our new character action game. We wanted to make it open world, we wanted to do all these things. That was happening simultaneously, and eventually we showed that to Sony. Shu, of course. She said, "We want it, and we just don't want it to be like Crash. We don't want something that eventually will show up on a competitor's platform. We don't want to license it for a number of titles. We want it to be a permanent part of the Sony universe." And the thing that made the most sense was basically to join Sony and sell the company and
was that the year that
be
happened?
acquired. That was the
Before
year it
Jack,
happened.
like,
It was
right at that
all
point.
part of the same negotiation.
I want that car. I want that speeder bike.
Yeah,
Give me that.
that's a fun part of moving between levels. But you've got 2 major areas to go through before you get there. So I remember one of the biggest technical achievements early on. If you go out of the village, first of all, it's time of day, which no one had really done.
Yeah, and you're
if you
drawing,
stand here, we're drawing all that in. And look at to your left, look at the waterfall area with the pyramid. Now you can see it from here, and you can run there without stopping, and it will get rid of what you're seeing right now and load in the high resolution version as you're going without you noticing, totally flawlessly, and you can try to keep that in your view as much as you can.
I was going to say, I'm going to run there and keep that.
Try to keep that in your view.
Well, with the cameras backwards, I don't know if I can do it, but like,
if you want, I will do it.
That's an imposter?
That is an imposter. It's a low-res imposter.
Hey, you do it. You try and do it.
Okay. Well, I know the punchline, which is no matter what I do with the camera,
At some point, you go into a gully or something, don't you?
I'm going to swim over there.
Oh. So like that outcropping island thing is going to swap?
Should go high res at some point. And if I remember correctly, we tried to make every edge case so that you can't. Do you see what the camera did?
Oh, you dirty
I didn't do that.
cheaters.
See what the camera did?
That
High
shot.
res.
So sneaky.
Totally sneaky. But nobody noticed that, and everyone felt like it was one giant open world you can run through. And that kind of little subtlety was just, it took us forever to get that right. I think we were working on that stuff until damn near alpha to get it so seamless.
And your first idea probably was to put particles in front of it. Can we just have like a bunch of particles appear?
Well, you take this island off there.
Yeah.
That island is mostly particles.
Is there
No
like,
joke.
Just, like camera-facing poly out there?
Yeah, exactly. And the smoke that, there's mist in front of it so that it could be low res, but that's basically mostly particles out there.
Nice. It's still animating.
So when you want to solve stuff, you solve it with particles in this game.
That's a pretty hermit crab. You have really.
And of course, if I look back, that's now the low res hut, and the same trick can be pulled in reverse. You know, you couldn't go over there and see the low res hut.
Sneaky fun. Are those jellyfish being thrown at you?
No, it's
Exploding?
bombs. It's being thrown by this thing in the center that I remember is there, but don't remember how to kill.
The sea monster thing? Hey.
All right. Now I know I need to get that. I know I need to get all of those balloons over there.
But the enemies are so well realized. Like just that hermit crab is so pretty, and those little things.
And
like
these guys will just spawn very nicely, so you don't see them come in. And I died.
Oh, this is the first time I think we died with. How many of those does he have?
A bunch. There was a guy named John that
Can
did
you
all
skip
those
those?
animations.
No.
I don't think
I
you
don't
can,
think
but
you
they're
can.
not that long.
But yeah, I mean, the NPCs are very luscious. They're not like little throwaway.
No, we did a lot of design work on these characters. You know, the game industry was just getting into design in the same way that the movie business did it. I think up until a certain point, it was like, just put something in. You know, if you think back to Space Wars or Pac-Man, there wasn't a lot that you could do. You only had 8x8 pixels or whatever you had, and you just kind of had to do it. Okay,
We were
well,
playing
that's an easy
Spyro
one.
with Ted, and he was like, "Oh, these like, how'd you come up with these characters?" Like, "Oh, this is just what our artist made. Like, he would just make these things, and
That's
then we
right.
would, like put
Like
them together."
That's right. And this is a game that was very different. I remember coming in one day and there were these guys in Crash, these rock platforms that rotate. And I said, well, that's not Crash. Like, Crash's world doesn't have self-animating rock things in it. Like, that's just not Crash universe. But we were under deadline, so it stayed in, and they were
Now
easy
it
to
is.
do, and so that was part of the universe. This game wouldn't have had that happen. This game, we would have all sat down and approved,
There's
you know, a
there's
design.
lore to this land, right, involving the precursors.
Yeah, exactly. There was a backstory. It was a much more produced game, and of course, that's now the standard, right?
And at the time, what were you playing? Like, were you playing, like, you obviously would have to research by playing a lot of Mario games, but were you also playing a lot of shooters? 2001?
Yeah, we were playing a lot, though. As a gamer, I tend to play very few games very deep. So if I get addicted to it, I'll play a lot of it. And, you know, obviously there were a lot of designers on this game, a lot of people responsible for it. So there were a lot of ideas coming in from elsewhere. But I wasn't one. That was cheap. We shouldn't have let that happen. Him bite you while
Were you
you were in a
locked into
camera.
it?
Yeah. I was locked into an animation and he bit me.
Games are harder then.
But yeah, I mean, at the time I was trying to play everything, but didn't have time. I'm in that position again now. I would like to play every game that's out there, but I have a day job, you know, trying to produce a lot of titles
lot
for
of
the
games.
launch of Oculus, and just don't have that much time at the end of the day to play all these things.
But you can just watch them on YouTube now. No, you don't have. No one has to annoy themselves by playing games anymore. You can
You
just
know,
watch.
I don't get that.
That's true.
Do
We're
you
old.
do you
We don't
do
understand that.
Do you do that? I mean, I literally have never watched
No.
somebody play through a game.
I watch if there's a branching game like Heavy Rain, I'll finish it, and then I'll watch the things I missed on YouTube. Like, show me all the other endings for Heavy Rain. But no.
Yeah, games are so much about the experience. Maybe this is some old school arrogant like game designer thing,
we're
but to
old. We
watch
don't-
somebody
Our
do,
kids will explain it to us.
and they will, they totally will, because they're doing it left and right now. I mean, the amount of views on some of these channels is unbelievable, but I just can't do it.
I mean,
can't-
you realize we're making one right now.
Yeah,
That's something
I know.
we should point out.
Yeah,
Like,
well, that's
you guys
true.
who
But
are-
we're not just playing the game. Fair enough. Fair enough. But we're
People who are
in
watching it
theory
should
talking
really
about the
feel good
making
about
of.
watching
It's
it.
different than just talking about the what you're seeing on screen. Maybe it's not. I don't know.
We bring up
Like I said.
uncomfortable truths like how hard games are to make. And like, I don't think anyone playing this, unless you're a game developer, realized the amount of work that went into hiding the switch of that imposter for the high-res version, right?
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing that I know how much work goes into that kind of stuff, but you might not, you would definitely notice if it was done wrong. And if you saw the load, you would definitely notice it.
That's right.
We have a lot of like LOD popping in games, like you fight those kind of bugs.
We were so against that in this game. We tried everything we could do not to show it to you. And you can see how like subtle little ideas like having that camera move around, that happens all the way through the game. And you are right, it does feel backwards.
Oh no, I've implanted that in your head. I like the other way I tend to use the camera as a rudder when I'm steering around and I'm running, which is harder for me to do when it's switched this way.
You know, it's interesting too. I've been saying as I've been working in VR, how a lot of these things we learned back in the day don't work anymore. And this is a perfect example. This camera is not a VR camera. It's just not going to work in VR. It's going to make you feel uncomfortable. So
Well, I mean, like, like a lot of camera motion is difficult.
Yep.
Not to get too deep into VR.
I don't remember how this one works. Okay, he spits, and I have a certain amount of time, I think, is how this works.
Are you gonna go eat it again? Oh, you
And
gotta
it's-
use that. You gotta use that platform thing. Those kind of remind me of one of the first Mario 64 levels. Those the ones that are going up, bringing you to the next level.
I think I probably am not going to get this, but I'll try my best.
And this is the one. It's in
Or also
one.
there's some sort of. Oh no, I did it! Oh, and I
did
got
it.
it! Oh, that was
Pulled
close.
it right out of his throat.
That was definitely close.
It should have let you also punch the bird. That would have been fun. Like you grab him by the throat, and then you grab the other one like this, and then you
I
kill
don't
him.
think I've gotten every one because I know I have to somehow get up and deal with that thing up there. But instead of trying to figure out how to do that, let's go to another area graphically more different.
See, I love this big open area and feeling like you're in a real place, you know? Because this, like talking about the spider caves, one of the things this game did, and maybe, I don't know if it was just a level load thing, but also I think it was the kind of thought that went into what this area is that makes it feel real. And that's the kind of, like this feels like a real town where people live, and there's a beach with monsters on it. And this little village area, like it feels like a real space. And and that creates this effect of when you're not playing the game of kind of dreaming about it or thinking about it, like, oh, I want to go back to that little village. I want to go back to the spider caves. I want to hang out there. Which to me started mostly when, I don't know why it's tied to 3D for me in my head, but that's when I started having those kind of feelings about games.
This is a moment here. This is an in-game character animation with a seamless cut. That was the beginning of what ended up becoming Uncharted. The ability to just trigger an animation that kind of cut in and out, and this is it. Like this is what we wanted to do in Crash that we never managed to do. And there's not much of it in this game. Really not that much of it. In 2, there's a hell of a lot more. In 3, there's a hell of a lot more. And this was kind of our vision, right? To go back and forth between that stuff. I remember loving kicking these guys and getting them to go into there so you can corral them into the corral.
Slapping these poor innocent wildebeests.
So again, that like here we are in a totally different area that's seamless. Back there, everything through that tunnel, that little bit is there, everything else is gone. You could try to swim around the edge. The camera will pull that trick on you again if you try to do it, or the shark will get you, one or the other, I don't remember. The other thing I remember about this level is how many times we had to do it over and over again to get it in frame rate. Because now we're not pulling as many level of detail tricks as we are inside and outside the levels. Once you're in a level, we try to keep everything pretty high res, and you would just get these frame rate hits. And I remember this was one of the bad areas right here where you could do this.
It's not occluded by anything?
All of the stuff that was popping in and out, nothing's occluded. You just have these massive open areas, and we would move a rock cliff out a little bit, or we'd add a tree that would just block something that we could get rid of that made it work.
And so the system is just going nuts in the background, loading and dropping things. And tell me a little bit about the relationship with Insomniac and the engine, because you guys had a lot of. I mean, you knew each other. Your company seemed really close, and there was some tech sharing going on, right?
Yeah, there was. When we went to Universal, Insomniac was given basically the same deal we had, and they were the next building over, or the next room over, depending on what time of the cycle it was. And we tended to be kind of competitive and at the same time collaborative. So we would share certain techniques and certain engines at certain times. And that would someone would come up with a really good idea and we'd trade it for something. So that would actually probably be a better Andy question. What precisely was Insomniac's, what was Naughty Dog's? At different times, I do remember at one time Naughty Dog got in a pickle and Insomniac kind of bailed them out with engine help, and vice versa definitely happened at least once.
I mean, that's nice. I think it's like when you're outside the industry, you're just starting the industry, you think that it's this kind of cutthroat, competitive thing. But I think among developers, there's a tendency to help each other out because you're not really, you don't succeed by the other person going out of business. Like it's not like banks or some sort of business where you're trying to like kill the competition. I don't think developers benefit by there being,
Totally. I always looked at it like basketball. Like off the court, we're good friends. We talk about the industry, do everything to help. When we get on the court, then it's game time. But that doesn't mean if you fall down on the court, I'm not going to put my hand out and help you up. Like the game is very simple. The game is designing the best game and entertaining and making the consumer happy. In so much as we're all doing that, that's the sport. Everything else, I'll help you with. So if helping you with the engine gets you a little farther ahead, I'm okay with that, because at the end of the day, you still have to make a good game, and that's the bigger challenge.
Laser beams.
Laser beams, and I have to do something here. Well, that'll start
When
it
in
off.
doubt, punch it.
Yeah, but I have to get the... This was actually a big deal too, because the concept of having all these different areas that were level of detailed out when you got away from them argued against having a light that I probably now can steer and see if I... This is one of the places where having the up camera would help. Well, in any event, I'm going to steer a light that goes all the way back to the other level, and getting it to work on both levels, I remember, was a huge argument we had, because making the technology for data to come back and forth between the levels was not something that
Well,
the
that's
programming staff
interesting.
wanted
total
to do.
different, like
Well,
simulation error bubble.
exactly. And these days, it's not a big deal. But back then, it was like, if that laser that's going past Daxter up there, which, by the way, notice the cutscene, the lasers there? It's another thing that we were really into. It's like, it has to be the real world. No pre-canned stuff, no fake stuff.
Yeah. That feels like a really unusual enemy, too. That kind of Jungle Book snake hanging down there.
I don't remember where the snake came from, but I do remember it was weird, and there was a lot of argument about it.
Well, I mean, it's neat, but it's usually like you have these little self-contained enemies that kind of stay in one little bounding box, but he's like all over the place. Could you punch him way up there?
Yeah, I'm sure you can. And then we had this little mini game here. This was another, let me see if I can get it started.
A mini game. Oh, mini games. What do you have in the basket?
Again, no load time, jumping right into a character. The ability to jump back to a visual of another level that's not loaded in high detail right now. Like, all of this stuff was just crazy. That was the city, which is out of memory right now.
Yeah. You just had to preload that at the start of the cutscene and just... Oh, scooping up fish game.
Yep, scooping up fish game.
The other thing, Ted could not tell me, how did it happen that these two games, like Ratchet and Clank and Jak and Daxter, both got made at similar times, and the names like seemed evocative. It seemed at first like, is this like a Armageddon Deep Impact thing going on?
This was one of those things where I remember...
a zeitgeist thing.
I remember
Just like-
talking to Shu and saying, Shu, basically Sony is funding two games of extremely similar background to come out at exactly the same time, Christmas. Why don't we release Jak and Daxter? I actually think this was a Spyro Crash discussion even before Jak and Daxter and Ratchet and Clank. Why don't we release one of them in the summer and one of them in the winter? And there was this feeling that everything was about the holidays. So you had to have as much on the holiday. And I remember there would be...
the only time to release anything.
You'd go into GameStop, which at that time was Electronics Boutique or any of the other things that are out there, and there'd be a single cardboard standee with both of our games, which is about the most confusing thing you can do. They're two competitive games on the same standee.
You could tie them together. That would be...
Yeah. Well, they were. I remember...
Bundled?
Yeah, you could find Crash in some of the Jak games and Jak and some...
Wait, what? The discs?
No, I'm trying to remember how
That
this
is
worked.
confusing.
No, not the discs. There were characters that crossed over, like, in some of the later stuff.
Oh, really? Are there Easter eggs for each other's games, I think?
But I remember wondering, why don't we spread these games out? And it was decided that that was a bad idea. These games definitely gave you your money's worth.
Jason, do you miss being more technically involved doing art, making particles?
Particles, no. Particles are amazing, and the people who do them are incredibly talented. They're very important. It was never my biggest love, doing the particles. I did it because I remember we had a budget and we couldn't hire an additional person. And I'd never done particles before, but we had every other employee hired, and particle animator, particle artist hadn't been hired, so I was like, okay, I'll do the particles. And so I taught myself particle art. What I will say is I do miss being a developer on a single product. I haven't done that in a long, long time. Briefly did a couple of mobile games that reminded me of the Crash days because they were a very small number of people, and I liked that.
Where you kind of live and breathe one vision.
Yeah, but it felt small and didn't feel as important as these games, so ultimately that wasn't satisfying. I do miss multi-year or at least year-long projects with a big team of people working on a single game. And I also think that I have some talents in the area of kind of managing that I'm just not doing anymore. Because if you work on a lot of titles, you simply can't have a big enough impact, right? A producer doesn't have, they can have big impacts, producers are really important, but you can't have the same impact you do as a director on a game. So I do miss that. Will I ever go back and do it again? I don't know. Hard to say. And the world has changed a lot too. These games have become a lot bigger, and 2 years is a dream at this point to do a game, and they tend to be 3 or more.
If you wanted to announce a new Jak game right now, that would be exciting.
I'm sure.
That'd be fun.
I'm sure. Well, that
People must tweet that at you all the time, right? Once in a while.
all the time. Naughty Dog owned Jak outright, and Sony bought Naughty Dog. So Sony owns Jak outright. If Sony wanted to make another Jak and Daxter game, they could do that without asking anyone's permission, without owing anyone anything. I think Naughty Dog has said publicly that at one point they explored it and they just didn't feel like they had a good handle on what that would mean on a PlayStation 3 or PlayStation 4 era, platform.
They're
Crash
doing all
is
right
much
with those
more
other games
complicated.
they're doing too, probably.
All right, last thing I'm going to do is herd these guys into that.
It's all right, whatever.
Out
You
of
do
the
the
way.
animation. Is it? Wait, why would you do smacking yourself on the face to simulate?
That's not
the
these
wildebeest.
guys. I think I've already spoken to that guy. I'm not sure I can speak to him again. I can
Oh, the
try.
thing he was doing?
The thing he does. Let's see if I
I
can
thought you
talk
meant
to
your
him
face
again.
was the.
No. This guy. Watch. It's too late because you've already spoken to him. But basically, he starts by smacking himself in the face when you wake him up. And I remember there was a couple animations, and none of them satisfied me that it felt like smacking himself in the head. So I actually smacked myself in the head on camera, and then asked the animator to recreate that. So it's authentic.
And you also did the breakdancing that Daxter does too, right?
No.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming and playing both of these games.
Of course.
This is always one of my favorites. I played of the era, and I still wish they made more. You don't have to make another one. I'm not going to be one of those people that tells you got to make another one. But I really like this game.
Well, I will say in closing, I think there's probably a period of years we went through from GTA 3 to now where gamers kind of looked at this and said, that's not adult, that's not what we want. And I think there is now an era of nostalgia coming, and also gaming has become so broad, there probably is an audience for games like this again. You've played the GTAs, it's not like they're going to go anywhere, we're definitely going to keep playing them, but why not do a cuter, kind of lower impact game? So hopefully something like this will be made. If it's not another Jak, something else.
Like Psychonauts 2.
Like Psychonauts
Good
2.
lead-in.
There you
to
go.
that.
This has all been a giant ad for Psychonauts 2.
Yeah. It took me a while to figure that out. Okay. Thanks for coming, Jason.
No problem. I've almost got this last
Oh,
one.
I'm sorry.
so
Let's wait and see if he does this, because this will be worth a lot of.
Well, it's worth
Blue horns.
an orb. Get in there.
Yes.
There you
nice
go.
cut. You got to cut out that part where we got lost.
Yeah, you gotta edit that.
Or break it into 2
That's what I would
episodes,
do.
leave us stuck there, and then have us look at each other really worried, and then have sad music playing, and it's like, to be continued. Like, will they ever get out of here?